Alright, so today we are going to factor some trinomials where a equals 1. Now your first question may be, what is a quadratic trinomial? A quadratic trinomial is just a three-term expression with x squared as the leading term. That's all well and good, you say, but what is a? A is the coefficient in front of the first term, so a, coefficient in front of the first term. B is the coefficient in front of the second term. And c is the constant at the very end. All right, so the good news here is that it's actually pretty easy to factor when a is 1. And just to show you that a is 1, 1 times x squared is x squared. So if we were to rewrite this example as 1x squared plus 6x plus 5, it would be the same thing, because we usually say when there's no variable or there's no coefficient in front of the variable, there's an invisible 1 there. So a here is 1. And there is a special way that we can factor this. Let's get into it. All right, so what is that special way to factor when a is 1? Well, we need two numbers. And those two numbers are going to multiply to be c, and they will add to b. So the easiest way to do this is to look at our a, b, and c. We can see that a is 1, b is 6, and c is 5. I'm looking at the first one. Let's list our factors of 5. Factors of 5 are what multiply to be c. And there are only two, 1 and 5, right? Now, as it would just so happen, 1 plus 5 is 6, which is b. So we found two numbers that multiply to be c and add to be b. 1 times 5 is 5, that's c. 1 plus 5 is 6, 6 is b. So when a is 1, we can skip straight ahead to this step where we list our two x's. So we're going to break that x squared up into two x's. And we can only go straight to this step when a is 1. So we're going to go straight to this step. We have x plus 1, that's one of our factors, and x plus 5, that's our other factor. And that's our answer. And if we wanted to check it, we could FOIL it. X times x is x squared plus 1x plus 1x plus 5x plus 5x, that's x times 5, plus 1 times 5 is 5. And what we get is we have an invisible 1 in front of this 1x here. So what we get is x squared, combined like terms, plus 6x plus 5. And that's the same thing we started with, so we did it right. Let's try this one. All right, we need two numbers that multiply to be c and add to be b. All right, so 49. Well, we have 1 and 49. 2 doesn't go into 49. 3 doesn't. 4 doesn't. 5 doesn't. 6 doesn't. But 7 certainly does. 7 times 7 is 49. Now, will 1 and 49 ever give us 14? The answer is no. What about 7 and 7? Yes, 7 plus 7 is 14. So we found two numbers that multiply to be c, 49, and add to be b, 14. So we're going to break up that x squared, and we're going to add 7, because 7 and 7 are the two numbers that multiply to be 49 and add to be 14. And of course, just like the last one, if you want to, you can FOIL it to check it and make sure we get the same thing in the beginning. All right, so the question you all have, what if they're not all positive? Well, as long as a is positive 1, we can use the same method. Two factors that multiply to be c and add to be b. In the first problem here, c is negative 2. There's two ways we can get to negative 2 from multiplication, right? We could have a negative 1 and a positive 2, or we could have a positive 1 and a negative 2. So which way is the right way? Well, take a look at your b. b here is that negative in front of the x. Of course, when there's a negative in front of an x, or just nothing in front of an x, we know that there is an invisible 1 there. So b is negative 1. So which one of these will get us to negative 1 when we add them? Well, negative 1 plus 2, that's just going to give us positive 1. Negative 1 plus 2 is positive 1, so that doesn't work. We need to get to negative 1. So let's try negative 2 plus 1. Well, that gets us negative 1, which is what we want. So these are our correct factors here. Positive 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Positive 1 minus 2 is negative 1. So we have our factors. Just like last time when a is 1, remember only when a is 1 can we split the x like this. And we're going to have a negative 2 and a positive 1. And I got that negative 2 and positive 1 from the factors that multiply to be c and add to be b. It's a positive 1 and a negative 2 that add to be negative 1, not the other way around. So that negative has to stay with the 2 when you write your answer. The negative has to stay with the 2, because if we'd done negative 1 and positive 2 and we added it up, we would have gotten a positive 1 for our b. But our b is negative 1, so when we add it, it needs to be positive 1 minus 2. The minus has to stay with the 2. The minus is always going to stay with the one that will. So basically, actually, an easier way to remember this would be the sign of our b is negative, right? When we add, we need the bigger number to be negative. The bigger number here is 2. We need the 2 to be negative in order to give us a negative b. Let's try this again, but with x squared minus 11x plus 18. What is c? C is 18. What is b? b is negative 11. Now, we need a positive multiplied, right? A positive c, but a negative addition, a negative b. There's only one way to do that. How do we use negative numbers to multiply to a positive? Well, we know that a negative times a negative is a positive, and a negative minus a negative, or excuse me, a negative plus a negative is just something that is more negative. So let's list our factors here. We have 1 and 18. We have 2 and 9. We have 3 and 6. So let's see. If we make them all negative to get our positive 18 and negative b, what's a negative 1 plus a negative 18? Well, that's a negative 19. That's not b. That doesn't work. What about a negative 2 plus a negative 9? That's a negative 11. That works. What about a negative 3 minus a negative 3 plus a negative 6? That's going to give us a negative 9. So the only one that works, the only one that gives us our negative 11 is the negative 2 and the negative 9. A negative 2 plus a negative 9 is a negative 11. You could also write this as negative 2 minus 9. But don't do minus negative because that's plus. So either negative 2 plus negative 9 or negative 2 minus 9. And of course, negative 2 times negative 9 is a positive 18, because a negative times a negative is a positive. So our answer, we're going to split that x up. Again, I cannot stress this enough. Only split the x up like this. Go straight here when a is 1. And we're going to put in our negative 2 and our negative 9. All right, so please like this video if you found it helpful. And next time we are going to talk about what to do when a is not 1. Thank you so much.